guys, welcome to Online Web Tutor. I am Sanjay. We are learning Laravel 8 framework tutorial. This is our part number 78. Inside this video, we will understand the concept of a scope of Laravel model. Now if I back to editor, so here we have opened a sample controller, means a controller file, a model called device.php which points towards devices table, as well as a file called web.php. Now if I back to browser, inside this database we have a devices table. The device model device.php is pointing towards this devices table. Now inside this table we have few rows, and inside this table we have a column called status. Inside this status field we have either value equals to 0 or equals to 1. Here we have few rows entry with id 1 and few rows entry with id 0. So what we want, we are going to write some queries by the help of model, which is going to fetch data from this devices table on the behalf of this status value. So back to editor, go inside the sample controller. Let's create few methods. So public function, let's say get devices. Now we want to make query inside devices table by the help of this device.php model file. So first of all, we need to import this model file inside this controller. So let's say use. Now device model successfully imported. Now go inside this method what we have created. So let's say that devices equals to, we are going to make use of this device model device. We will use, let's say, where, and inside this where we will put the condition, let's say status equals to 1, and simply we will use get method. Now if I type echo pre, it means pre-formatting tag, and here let's say print our devices. If we save all these changes, go to web.php, let's create a route. So route get request type, and here let's say list devices, and it will point towards sample controller. So first of all, to use this controller inside this web.php, first of all we need to import that. So here we have imported. Go inside this list devices. This route will call a method from sample controller. It's a class, and in the second value of this array simply we will pass this method name. So copy and paste. Now if I copy, go here, type the URL, and as we can see that we are getting a collection object. Here we have the 0 index, first index, second index, and third index. It means total number of rows we are getting equals to 4 if we count manually inside this devices table. So here we have first row, second row, third row, and fourth row on the behalf of this status equals to 1. If we put 0, then 2 rows will be returned with index 0 and index 1. So right now we don't have used any of scope method inside this model, means we didn't use scope right now inside this device model. Let's say that right now we have a simple single method. Let's say we have 10 or 20 methods inside this sample controller. Inside each method we are calling device model, and we are querying our table to get the devices on the basis of this status. This code means this where condition. Right now we have a single condition, that is status equals to 1. If we have two or more than 2 conditions, let's say we have another condition, and this query we are repeating inside each method of this sample controller. Consider 20 methods inside this sample controller. Inside each method we are repeating same conditions, means again and again. So can we think that it is going to actually make this file as large? Code is bit too lengthy. So is there any method to actually get rid of all these repeating things from each of the method, because we don't want to write all these conditions again and again inside each method? So for that here comes the role of scope in model. In model, we will create a scope. That scope will contain this reusable code which we are going to repeat inside each method, and by the help of that scope we can reuse the same piece of code and we will make query inside devices table. The main concern is that we don't want to repeat this condition again and again inside each of the 20 methods of this sample controller. We want to reuse the same scope. So go inside this device.php. Let's say that public function, we are going to create a scope. So to create a scope in model file, we have a keyword called scope. After that, we need to provide a name. Either we can pass the column name or simply this time actually we are querying by the help of, let's say, status, because this is the condition we are adding. So we need to specify a name. So either we can give the column name or simply, let's say here we are querying our table by the help of a status column. So simply scope, let's say where status. Now it's a function. So inside this function we will pass a query variable. Go inside this function block, let's return query. We will use where method and simply let's say status equals to 1. Now if we save this model, back to controller. Now this time don't need to write this status, so get rid of all these where methods, and instead of that we are going to use the scope what we have created inside this device model. So this is the keyword, and here where status is the name. So we will use this where status while calling this model. So device, let's say where status, this is the name actually what we had defined with the scope. Now if we save this controller file, go inside this browser, reload this page. So now as we can see that we are getting 0 index, first index, second index and the third index. It means we are getting the same result data, but this time instead of writing the where method here, we have made a global scope inside this device model, and we can reuse this scope inside any of the method of this sample controller. So while calling this scope, what we had defined here called where status, either we can call in all in lowercase or we can make camel case as well, something where status. So if we save, go and reload, result will be same. Now if we let's create another method inside this sample controller. Sample controller, if we call it as get active devices, let's say get inactive devices. Now if we save, let's create a route inside this web.php. Now this time this method has been changed from get devices to get active devices, and the route let's change to list active devices. Now if I copy, pasting it here, this time list hyphen inactive hyphen devices. Now it will call the method called get inactive devices. Now here we have two routes which is pointing towards two different methods of this sample controller. Let's assume we have two or more than two methods inside this sample controller, but this time we can use called scope method while calling this model. We are using the sample means where conditions what we had written inside this scope method. Now save this change, go here, this is list hyphen, let's say that active devices. Now we are getting the same data what we had seen before that, and again instead of list active devices, if I type list inactive devices, again we are getting from 0 to third index, but it is not making any sense because active indicates that we need to get the devices whose status equals to 1, but it's in case of inactive we need to take all the data from this table whose status equals to 0. So right now we have created a scope in which we have passed a static value. So how can we make this static value as a dynamic value so that while calling this scope here inside this get active devices, we will pass 1 here, and inside this where status of this get inactive, we will pass the 0 value. So for that, to make dynamic scope methods, we need to define the second value as argument called arg. Go here, and instead of this static value 1, call it as arg here. Back to controller, go inside this scope method, passing 1 here for the active status, and for inactive I am passing 0. So simply device where status is a scope and 1 is a value, this value will go inside this scope method inside this argument. It will put dynamically inside this where condition, and it will return only the rows whose status equals to 1. But when we call this route, call this method, it will pass 0 value, go inside this where method, and it will go return all the rows whose status equals to 0. So go to browser, reload this page. Now inside this list inactive devices we have passed 0 value, so we are getting 0 index, first index, and we don't have any other indexes because 2 rows of 0 is status inside this table. Now again, go and type, let's say, list active devices, pressing enter. Now as we can see that inside this collection object we are getting 0 index, first index, second index, and third index. So here what we had seen before using the concept of scope, we have seen the same query we have repeated multiple times inside each method of sample controller. But when we have the concept of scope, this time this scope means this condition is going to reuse inside each method of sample controller. And also we have done this scope condition dynamically so that the dynamic conditions and its values will be controlled inside model. Now if you back to slide, go here. So this is all about the theoretical concept of scope of Laravel model. The first point says that Laravel provides a solution for wrapping conditions into a readable and reusable statement called scopes. Obviously, because we had seen that this scope is going to provide a reusable as well as readable code. As we can see here that without using this scope, we had written status equals to 1 means directly where method after this device model. But when we had created this scope, now code is cleaner as well as this piece of where condition we have reused inside while calling this model. Now go to the second point. We can use Laravel scopes to dry. Dry indicates that don't repeat yourself. We had seen that while writing where method here, we are just repeating ourselves to write the same condition again and again inside each method. But this time this scope had reduced the code and also the page length because this condition is now created a scope and we have passed the dynamic value here. Back to slide. A scope is just a method. We had created a scope. Now it seems a method here which can use in your model to encapsulate the syntax used to execute a query. Scopes are defined by prefixing the name of a method with scope. While defining any scope in model, we need to write scope as a prefix keyword. If suppose we have misspelled this scope keyword, go and reload this page. Or let's say simply we are going to remove this scope keyword from this prefix. So if we go and reload this page, so right here we have some error that is non-static method where status. So back to editor, go and add scope keyword here, scope. So when we call device model where status, automatically it will go and search here inside this model about this scope and find and pick and result data. So successfully guys, by the help of scope concept, we can create a readable and reusable conditional statements. those conditions which we are trying to repeat inside each methods, the best option is to create a scope and put the dynamic value and reuse the same piece of conditions again and again inside each of the method inside application. This is the better option to create and use scope in Laravel application. This concept is very useful when we are creating a large application in which thousands of query is executing. So in that situation, we need to increase and optimize the queries so that page loads fastly. So for this video session guys, thank you for watching and have a great day.